They were young and happy, not a worry in the world, but to live in the moment. This is a story of an adventurous and profound love. It all started on a dark, gloomy day in early spring. The couple was on an adventure, and that adventure was to break into the local park. It was late at night when they headed to their friend's house, nearly 11:30 p.m. Haley turned to Josh with concern. "It's such a gloomy day. Do you really think we should go to the park?" Josh responded by saying, "Yeah, it'll be fine. There's no rain in the forecast. It's just supposed to be cloudy today." Though this was reassuring to her, she had a gut feeling that something was going to go wrong. Terribly wrong. Josh asks Haley, "So have you heard the rumor of what happens at midnight in McMillan?" Haley responds, "No. What does?" Josh then thinks to himself that because she doesn't know, he can have a little bit of fun with it. "Well now, I can't tell you that until we are there." Josh saying this scared Haley greatly and left her more worried than before. As they pulled into their friend's house, Josh explained that there was a path in the backyard that led directly to the park. After they got out of the car and walked through the short trail to the park, Haley could no longer handle the stress of not knowing, and blurted out with almost an anger, "So what did happen here?" Josh looked at her and stood there, still and silent, for just a moment, seemingly gathering his thoughts. His face turned plain, emotionless, and still. Then he opened his mouth and told her. A long time ago, before this park, before the school, or even the city was here, this was nothing but rural farmland owned by a wicked, evil old man. In the 1870s, the Ku Klux Klan had extended to nearly every southern state, causing an evil to overcome and consume many of the followers along with their families. One fateful night, just like this very one, a local Ku Klux Klan group was having a cross burning on the old man's land, where something very evil happened. Out of nowhere, the old man lost control at exactly midnight on the dot. He unsheathed a long machete which glistened in the flames of a burning cross, and with an evil laugh he sliced every member to bits. Then turning the blade and sinking it straight through his own heart, he doomed them to haunt this exact spot for eternity. The legend states that every night, if you are not out by 12 on the dot, you are as good as dead. And if you do manage to escape, he will follow you until you sacrifice an innocent soul or your own to quench his bloodlust. And his name is the Dead Watcher. Haley responds in fear, saying, "Josh, why are we here? We have to leave right now." Josh tries to calm her down, saying, "Come on, it's fine. Look, it's 11:59 and we are fine." "I don't like it here," she says. "Let's leave right now, Josh." Haley broke into a sprint, but Josh caught something out of the corner of his eye and jerked her to the ground. A cross had burst into flame and stood in the wide open. Around the cross were figures of pure white jumping and yelling as they circled the cross. Without any hesitation, Josh pulled out his phone to get a photo of what was happening. As he raised his phone, everything went dark. Suddenly, the cross burst into flames again, revealing a tall, dark figure wielding a long, polished blade. In the flaming light of the blaze, the two could see a face of evil, covered in scars, zombie-like skin, a hat on his head, and a single eye, which was glowing a bright red. They stared at one another, and then back, trembling and overcome with terror. Haley turned to Josh, saying nothing else but, "Dead Watcher." At that moment, Josh knew they had only a slight chance of getting out, and he was determined to do nothing else but live at any cost. Suddenly, after what seemed like forever, Josh burst up, grabbing Haley. They erupted into a sprint for their lives. They ran like they never had before, knowing that if they did not, that they would surely die. As Josh looked back, the figure was gone, and he was relieved for a moment. until he turned his head forward to see that he was running directly at the dead watcher. He jolted to the left, running through the parking lot and onto the trail leading to where they had parked. Haley, with little breath to spare, said to Josh, "No matter what happens, I love you." Josh responded, "I love you too. And don't forget that there is another way out. It's us or someone else." Haley, in anger and shock, burst out, "No! We cannot do that, Josh. It's murder." The two broke into a sprint, once off the path towards his car, jumping in it, locking the doors. Once they were inside, Josh floored it out of there, skirting his tires like a maniac. They sat there in silence, holding one another's hand, not knowing what to do or what to say. After driving for a few minutes, Josh started to say something, but was interrupted by Haley yelling, "Watch out!" Josh jolted the steering wheel, veering onto the opposite side of the road, missing something by a few inches. Josh asked Haley, "Was that him?" She responded back with a sentence of disbelief. "Yes, it was. He's not giving up until blood is spilt." Josh did not respond, but continued to hold her hand, knowing this may be their last night with one another. Josh, knowing that he would do anything to live, turned to Haley, asking an ungodly question that meant life or death. "Who should we sacrifice? Someone random? Which brother do you like least? Or should we just sacrifice ourselves?" Haley, in horror but acceptance due to the situation, responded, "Doesn't the legend say they have to be innocent?" "Yes. So which brother do you like least?" Josh said. Haley sat there contemplating life, and if she could live knowing she killed her own brother, or even a stranger, and after what seemed like hours, she responded, "Justice." As the two approached Josh's home, the dead watcher had been waiting on them. As they turned into Josh's neighborhood, they both saw him just standing there in the clubhouse parking lot underneath a streetlight, staring directly at them. Josh knew there was little time to spare, and Haley knew by how tight Josh held her hand that they could prevail. He flew down every road and spun tires on every turn until they reached his house, jumping out in a sprint to the door, locking it as if it would help. They crept up the stairs and creaked open the door to where her brother was staying since he was in town visiting. Josh grabbed a pillow and crept to the bedside, motioning for Haley to come help. As he was about to do it, he whispered under his breath, "Forgive me, God. I do not know any other way." With a great force, he smashed the pillow over the young boy's face. Josh cried as the boy's arms and legs flung in resistance. He was never a violent person and would never hurt a fly, but he knew he had to do it if they wanted to live. After Justice's body was limp, they picked him up and carried him outside. They then woke him up. He jolted with anger and shock, and Josh saw the dead watcher approaching. Josh yelled, "Dead watcher, we sacrifice this boy to you." And at that moment, the dead watcher quit his focus on Josh and Haley and turned his one red eye on the boy. Josh and Haley ran inside, locking the doors. The young boy banged on the doors, screaming, as the dead watcher approached. Haley and Josh cried as they heard him screaming for them at the door. Then there was silence. After that day, Josh and Haley were never the same, but eventually came to live with that night. They grew up, got married, and had 2 kids, a girl and a boy, which they named Justice. They never returned to that park again, and never saw the dead watcher as long as they both lived. And that is the story of the dead watcher.